Hi, everybody. We're just going to give it a few minutes until more people come on.
Wait.
For those people, can I ask everybody just to mute themselves until we start?
This can come here, right?
Just waiting for a few more people to come on. Hold on a second. There's a lot of people waiting to come in the waiting room. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Yeah?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to ask, there's a lot of background noise. So I ask that everybody mutes themselves, please. We like to see your faces if you're willing, so you don't have to take the video off. Okay. We'll start in a few minutes.
Azriel, you gonna come with me? Okay, Rory, you want to just watch him while I go to Fry's and Home Depot, Ace?
Who's talking? Hold on one second. Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay. If the people that are from Ramot Bet, if you could unmute yourselves. Everybody who is from Ramot Bet, please unmute yourselves. Okay. And anybody, if you don't mind, to just come on the call, just to please mute yourself. There's a lot of background noise. Hold on a second. Who is that? Okay, we're going to start in a minute. Okay. So hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kim Bat. I live in Jerusalem in the Old City, and I work as a real estate agent in Jerusalem. And one of the reasons I got into doing what we're doing every week is that many of my friends were in contact with me. Sorry, there's a lot of background noise coming from... Okay, let's see. A lot of people were reaching out to me and saying they would really like to find out about other areas in Israel which were Anglo and were more affordable than the major cities. So I started to investigate different communities within Eretz Israel, within Israel, and it's been very, very successful. A lot of people are reaching out. My intention is to find a place for everybody to feel that they have a place in Israel. So there's lots of different places that in Israel which are full of opportunities with Anglos, with whether it's up north or kibbutzim or yeshuvim or wherever it may be, there's lots of opportunities for people. So every week we investigate a different community. So this week we are concentrating on Jerusalem. And we're going to be looking at Ramot Bet, which is a wonderful community. And there are some people on the call tonight that are going to open up for questions and tell us about the community. So I'd like to start off. Is David on the call?
Hi.
Hi, David. How are you doing?
Okay. How's it going?
Good. Okay. So David, would you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. My name is David Corman. Moved to Ramot Bet around 4 years ago. I kind of wear two hats. I Nefesh contact for the community of Ramot Bet, and I also am involved with the welcoming committee in one of.
We have
on the call. After the call, I can leave my information, and happy to help any way I can.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with the internet. Hold on one second. Can everybody hear, or is it a very bad connection?
We can hear.
It's fine.
It's okay? Great.
You can hear.
Okay, did everybody hear what David said?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, so David, can you tell us how long you've lived in the community for?
For about 4 years.
Okay. Okay. Hello.
Hello, I'm just moving to the other room. How are you?
Good.
Good. My name is Larry Woznicka. I've lived in the community 10 years. We made Aliyah about 10 and a half years ago.
No,
And I will try to get on through the computer right now. I'm doing it through my tablet.
So while we're waiting for you, I'm going to go over to Sarah TV.
Hi, everybody. We moved to Ramot Bet just about a little under 2 years ago. When we made Aliyah, we moved to a yishuv at first, which is called Yad Binyamin, and we lived there for 4 years. However, we were renting there, and slowly we started hearing of a few families in Yad Binyamin who also were renting and didn't buy yet. A few families that moved to Ramot Bet, and we thought, what's happening in Ramot Bet? We never heard of anything in terms of an Anglo community there. And so these friends of ours who we knew from Yad Binyamin told us about this well-kept secret that I think is not as much of a secret anymore, and that there's somehow a kind of rejuvenation of some younger families coming to Ramot Bet. I think there have always been some English-speaking families, probably since the 1980s. But when we were looking at Israel, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, we were always making pilot trips, and we never thought there'd be a community for us in Jerusalem because it's a city, and we were looking for kind of a warm, nurturing community since we don't have a lot of relatives in Israel. We moved from Atlanta, Georgia, which is a very warm, nurturing community for people who don't have local family. And so suddenly Ramot Bet became a place on our radar. And we came for a few Shabbatot, and we felt like the community has a lot of unique elements to it. It's in Jerusalem, which is the number one, special characteristic of Ramot. So when anyone asked me, how could you leave Yad Binyamin? I said, well, I'm going to Jerusalem, and they couldn't say anything. So that was a dream, can't go up from Jerusalem. So here we are, and we're pretty close to, even though it's a bit remote when it comes to Jerusalem, it's somewhat suburban. We love the combination of being able to have trees and see grass and, have green space and a garden and a little more space in terms of housing than is typical in Jerusalem, but yet have access to so much that Jerusalem has to offer. We can hop on a bus, and in 10, 15 minutes, we can be in the shuk, right in the middle of, Machane Yehuda, or, a few more minutes down and right in town. So I think that there's that unique combination of it being a community and growing, a growing community, especially in terms of young families coming. We love the fact, coming from a yishuv where things are more homogeneous, that there are people of different generations, and we're friends with people who are our grandparents or who are our parents' age, and then neighbors of ours who are coming with very young children, and everyone gets along, and we like that there's still a bit of diversity within the English-speaking community. And people who come to Ramot, our Ramot Bet in particular, are well accepted, despite some maybe subtle differences when it comes to hashkafa. There seems to be a acceptance of a lot of different types. People get along, even if their kids go to different schools. So there's a really great community feel here. So I'll stop talking, but that's just my little plug. We're very thrilled to be here. And the longer we're here, we just love it more and more. We're excited that new families continue to come and that the English-speaking community is growing. And we're hoping that, I want to thank Kim for what she's doing, because in the news, they're always talking about a influx of Olim, from North America. So we're hoping more people are going to make Aliyah with everything going on in the world right now. And we're hoping that people will consider Ramot Bet as a viable option, even for new Olim. So I'd also love to answer any questions. And if people want to contact me after the call, you must all know Kim somehow because you have the link. So you can get my information from her, and I'm happy to speak to people and share my experience here.
Thank you so much. One of the people on the call have asked me about schooling. So maybe you can touch a little bit about where your girls go to school.
So, right, I can talk more about the school for girls because we only have daughters. And we have five, my husband and I have 5 daughters ranging in age from 15 to 8. And my girls have been through a few schools. So we actually learned, we got to know a few different schools. So I have a little bit of experience with that. What I would say is let's start with there's a local school that's popular among the new families that are coming in, and it's called Noam Libanot, and they have a Noam Libanim as well. So it is Noam. I can't speak that much about it because my girls haven't gone there, but I think David has children there. But from what I understand, it's a solid religious Torani school, a Mamlechti Dati Torani school. My girls, as I said, one of the things I love is that we have access to so much. I have 2 daughters that go to a school called Ayelet HaShachar, which is in Kiryat Moshe. It's actually very close. They can either take what they call a hasa'ah, which is like a little ride, a bus ride, kind of, a little van that picks the girls up. And there are many local girls, Israeli, French, American, that are picked up. And, within 15 minutes or so, depending on traffic, they can get to school. My girls who go are 11 and 12. And so they love to hop on a bus. And it's a very quick ride there. Also, about 15, 20 minutes, they can be in Kiryat Moshe. So that's a school that's what they call elementary school. It goes from 1st to 8th grade. I have 2 other girls that go to a school called Benot Yerushalayim, which is bought property in Ramot, and hopefully within the next few years, we'll hope to move, I believe, to Ramot Bet /Gimel. And that's a school that's under, Ayelet HaShachar is under the Chardal umbrella because, in Israel we have little boxes. So, but the reality is that the boxes really are fluid. And again, that's one of the things religiously that we like about Ramot Bet is that there's a lot of fluidity, and some of the families that will send to one school may send to another one, depending on your child, and there are subtle differences between them. But Benot Yerushalayim is a new dynamic school, which is under the Mamach, which is the Mamlechti Haredi umbrella. They are very current in terms of all the research and education. They do problem-based learning. It's very dynamic school, but it's for younger girls because it's only been around for a few years, for about 4 or 5 years. My older girls were too old, but I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old or 9-year-old that go to the school Benot Yerushalayim. It was in the Rehavia area. It moved now. They're just looking for a location. It moved to the Geula area. Again, the Hasa'ah, the little van will come and pick the girls up, and there are several girls in the neighborhood that go. And again, it takes them about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes to get to and from school, depending on traffic. So those are 2 schools. I also have a girl in high school who goes to Ramot Bet for high school. And that's because she wanted a very Anglo school. She wanted the flavor of Ramot Bet and so she takes a bus, and within an hour she gets to school in Ramot Bet So depending on, for people who come with older girls at least, that's a great viable option because everybody speaks English, and if someone has to integrate into the culture and the school system, especially in high school, it can be very difficult for girls over a certain age. So there are schools available that even though we don't live in Ramot Bet the kind of lifestyle that's there for Anglos is also accessible from Ramot Bet. So those are just a few examples of schools that I know about for girls.
I noticed a question about whether Ramot Bet is within or on the other side of the Green Line. And it's actually a very interesting question because the Green Line runs through Ramot Bet. And in fact, our rabbi, the rabbi of our Beit Knesset, the line runs through his living room. So if that issue is important for you, there are parts of Ramot Bet that are within the Green Line, the old boundary, and parts that are not. However, getting to Ramot Bet, you have to go out of the Green Line to get back in.
Larry, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'll introduce myself. I was sort of moving rooms when I started. My name's Larry Wisnika. I made Aliyah with my wife about 10.5 years ago, and we've lived in Ramot Bet for 10 years. And I just have to comment on, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, the young woman who was just speaking earlier. As much as we are a very heterogeneous group when it comes to age, I believe we're a very homogeneous group when it comes to religiosity and political outlook. It seems to me that we all seem to line up on the same page when we start discussing the politics. So it's actually a very welcoming and very comforting environment to be in, unlike parts of North America where you are afraid to have discussions over dinner because you're going to offend half the people around the table.
Okay. Is Patrick on board? Patrick on?
Yeah, hi.
Hey, Patrick.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Kim.
You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Patrick Amar. I've been living in Ramot Bet with my wife and family here for about 5 years. We made Aliyah about 15 years ago from Canada. And so we have 5 young kids, like 7, 9, 11, and 13. And the move here, we used to live in the old city with Kim, and we love Ramot. Very welcoming for families, especially I'd say like North Americans, because we all kind of want to integrate and live an Israeli life, but we also want to have a little bit of like the immigrant bubble that we're used to. So there's the best of both worlds here, a lot of like English Americans and Canadians, but then at the same time, you feel like you're in Israel with Israelis. So that's very nice and very important for us. My kids all go to school. My two daughters actually go to Benot Jerusalem as well, like Sarah's daughters. And then my boys go to a grade school here called Rappaport or Ahavat Israel. Also kind of like Hardal, you know, religious but Zionist, and a lot of Limudei Kodesh and a lot of like science, English, and math. So a typical kind of Jewish day school that, you know, that we support and we're very happy with. Also, it's in the neighborhood. Ramot is, it's amazing. Like I'm looking outside my window right now, and across the valley is Jerusalem. So, you know, we're literally kind of like the outskirts of the city, but we're very close to the city center. So there is a problem in the morning sometimes of traffic getting out of Ramot. Lately, it's been better, but you know, if there's one downside to living in these suburbs is the traffic that we can have going in the morning. I work as a tour guide, so I'm always kind of like traveling out of my house, going to different parts of the country. And, you know, all the highways intersect here. So a lot of my friends who live in this neighborhood might work in Tel Aviv or in city center of Jerusalem or in Modi'in or other places. So it's a bit of like a commuter feel, and it's convenient for that. We have all the highways here and buses. There's also a great mall here. So, you know, we kind of have everything we need locally, but at the same time, it's nice to be so close to the city, hop on a bus or drive, you know, very, very quickly to get to Jerusalem city center. So like I just to kind of repeat what other people said, you have the kind of best of both worlds here.
And what about
If anybody has any questions, I see some questions at the chat here. I'm just gonna like kind of look through them.
Yeah, look through them. Patrick, what you live right? Can you explain like the terrain, like where you are, because it's right by the forest, and I think that's quite special because it's very unique. That
we live literally right on the forest. The Jerusalem forest is the edge of the city that goes from Jerusalem pretty much to like Bet Shemesh and the coast. And so a lot of wildlife, trees, hiking, biking, especially during the lockdown, it's been amazing. People have been walking around the forest so much and using it. Great parks. I'm just looking at some of the questions here about like religious diversity. It really is a very religiously diverse area. Okay, I mean, there's religious, there's secular, there's Israelis who have been here for a couple of generations, and then there's like the Olim like us, you know, maybe a little more modern Orthodox. There's Haredi families. There's really everything here, which is how we like it as well. Other parts of Ramot could be classified as more Haredi. But Ramot Bet specifically keeps a bit more of a diversity of having like secular and religious kind of living side by side, and I'd say getting along very nicely here. So other questions is that, you know, Ramot Bet is getting more Haredi. Is this true? Would a Dati Leumi family feel comfortable there? I think absolutely a Dati Leumi family would feel comfortable here. Because again, with this diversity, it doesn't feel like Ramot Bet belongs to anybody. It kind of, it's come as you are, different people getting along here. And meanwhile, for those who are more Haredi, you know, the more Haredi parts of Ramot are just a couple of streets away. So you have the yeshivas and the shuls and the schools. And so you can live in, let's say, one part of Ramot and function in another part of Ramot, and it works out very nicely. In terms of prices, are there furnished rentals available? Yes, there are. The average price to buy a house in Ramot Bet, to buy a house, first of all, it has to be said, what's nice about Ramot is that there's actually houses here, which is pretty atypical. You know, a lot of people live in apartments, but here you have homes, you have villas or cottages. Some of the homes here were built in the 1970s after the Six-Day War. And they were really built kind of like for the affluent residents of Jerusalem, people who were professors at Hebrew University, lawyers, doctors. And so you have a bit of an affluent area here. And some of these homes were very big, very beautiful, 35, 40 years old. Okay, so a lot of them have not been renovated. Some of them need major renovation. The larger homes here are going between like 4 and 5 million shekels. The villas and cottages are going between like 3 to like 3.5 million shekels. And then let's say some of the smaller cottages or like the bigger apartments between like 2.7 and like 3 million shekels. And then I don't know if those are prices that are like fixer upper or not. It depends. Anybody who's coming here, I think, has to first land here, maybe get a rental for a year, and then check it out while you're here. That's what we did. We rented a house, like a cottage, for the first year, and while we were here, we found other places, and we moved several times. And I think that's part of making Aliyah and moving to Israel. You might be, I think you should be prepared to kind of move around until you find your spot, unless you know exactly where you're going to land, which is really the hardest thing to do, I think.
The question about green space is actually an excellent one. We moved to Ramot Bet because we wanted to be in an area that had a lot of green space. We came from Toronto. We actually lived in a neighborhood called Thornhill, which was a very green suburb of Toronto. And Ramot Bet is actually the green suburb of Jerusalem. So we're reliving the same kind of lifestyle here in Israel, in Jerusalem. I guess for us, we feel like we're very much part of Jerusalem rather than distant from it, because we often, although we have a car, we take the bus in because it's so much more convenient, and it's only a 20-minute bus ride from just a 5-minute walk from where we live to the corner of Yafo and King George. So we're talking about very, very close proximity, certainly not a suburb in the North American sense of distance.
Great. Thank you so much. Is Kelly on the call? Kelly? Kelly's not on? Ilana,
Kim,
are you
can I-
on? I don't know, it disappeared. Yeah, sure, Patrick, carry on.
Because I see some of the chat questions.
Yeah.
A lot of people are
Please.
asking questions
Yeah,
on the
sure.
chat. And some people are asking about like Sephardic communities. I'm Sephardic. I'm Moroccan from Montreal. And I know some people from Montreal are actually been interested in this community. And that's how, kind of one of the reasons why we set up this call. It's very diverse here. Absolutely. And there's a lot of Sephardic Jews in Ramot. And there's shuls here, and there's like a feeling for it as well. It's very open. And at the same time, you have like some kind of more mainstream synagogues where everybody davens together. I happen to go to a few different synagogues here. There's a lot of Olim, not just from North America. There's a large French community here. There's a large Brazilian community here of like Brazilian Jews. There's more and more Spanish Jews coming in from like South America. A Russian community, yeah, absolutely. There's Russians. There's really everybody here. So it's kind of like the perfect mix, I think, and balance of different Jews and different views. And I think that's what makes it really nice for people and attractive for people.
Hi, Kim.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, there were two.
Hi, Kim. Sorry, I unmuted.
Oh, hi, Ilana. How you doing?
Good, Baruch Hashem.
Good. Okay, so would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us about yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name's Ilana Cowland. Myself and my husband chanced upon Ramot on a drive looking for somewhere to live about 11 years ago. So I'm probably one of the Ramot veterans on the call. And it's really remarkable to see what's happened here over the last 11 years in terms of how much has sprung up. The few Anglo families, many of them were saying like, enough, there's nothing happening here. This town is dead. Let's get out of here. And over the last 10, 11 years, it has really, really, really developed. People were asking about amenities. When I came here, there was a falafel shop. Now there is a complete mall with 2 big supermarkets that deliver to your house, and hardware stores and clothes shops and home shops and everything everything that a mall really needs to offer. Lovely community center in the middle of Ramot next to the library and the pool, where there are lots of activities for kids and chugim and whatnot. There's a lot of shiurim and growth that's happened in the sort of new Anglo network of the community. I mean, for those of you who know Israel, Israelis are not really used to communities like we know them because they grew up amongst Jews. So it's often the Anglo Jews who come from abroad who know what it's like to live in a small community centered around a shul or a rabbi who've created more of a sense of community, which is why I think the Anglo community feels very connected to each other. Even with all the diversity, it's not really a problem. I think people are quite relieved to find a place where there is mutual respect without there being homogeneity, as it were, which is quite refreshing, for the otherwise very polarized Jerusalem vibe. There's lots of doctors. The way when you make Aliyah, you join one of the sort of companies that sell, private national insurance really, and medical insurance. So there's 3 or 4 to choose from. They're all much of a muchness, but each one of them have a basis here. So you'll have specialists here as well as GPs, as well as dentists. If you don't want to leave Ramot and your job is either remote, or from the area, you really don't have to most of the time, unless you're having a baby, you might have to go to the local hospital in Jerusalem, Maine. But other than that, many people find that they are able to, stay in Ramot if they want to, that you have all your local amenities over here. So it's been a really beautiful experience. And what's nice also about the Anglo community here is that it's not America, meaning everybody here appreciates the fact that your kids are quite well immersed in Israeli society. The schools they go to, they will learn Hebrew with an Israeli accent. It's not the schools that, whilst the Anglo kids may be in the schools, they are not the only kids, and sometimes that's an advantage because otherwise there's nobody to really learn the culture or the language from. Here we very much feel like we are in Israel. There's just a nice big fat Anglo support system, but it's not it's not Chutz La'aretz. It's really Israel. It just happens to be that there's a lot of people to talk to and to learn from, and great WhatsApp groups where you have all the information that you need from all the locals. Great choice of schools, so many different schools. There's one of the nicest Bnei Akivas in the country with a fantastic Kalbach Friday night. They're wonderful Dati Leumi schools. There's a conservative shul up the road. There's a bunch of different Sephardi schools with different nuances based on which Eda they come from. There is a local minyan that is more for the English-speaking chutznikim who want Divrei Torah in English. There's a Haredi caravan as well for the local Avrechem, and there's a lot of harmony. We had a donation of a Sefer Torah a few years ago, and it was such a beautiful thing to see the donating party go from one shul to the next. Just like the whole of Ramot, there's a connection. It's not. From what I've experienced, I live in a little road that has representatives of all the different religious, diverse, representatives, and that's fine. That's really okay. You do yours, I do mine. We learn from each other and try not to judge each other, and succeed in bringing up our kids knowing that we do the things that we believe in because we do them, not because the neighbors do them. And learn to live in harmony and respect for the people who have different paths and choices and priorities. That's very, very special about Ramot.
Thank you so much. Is Ira on the call? I'm not sure. Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions. And if anybody wants to private message me, I did put on the message, my email address is Kim, KIMLBASH @gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Kim Bash. And anybody who wants to reach out to me privately, I will give, with permission, anybody who's on the call that lives in Ramot Bet, I can hook you up with people to ask more questions. But I want to open it up to the floor. So anybody who has a question, please unmute yourself and address anybody who you would like to
What
talk.
are the job opportunities like?
Who's asking?
The different, Eliana, job opportunities?
Anybody? Most people, I think, that are in Ramot don't actually work in Ramot. So, Patrick, you want to answer, or Sarah? David?
I could answer it. So I'd say there are a lot of opportunities because remote is very geographically situated in basically between a lot of different areas, and in other words, you have access to all of Yerushalayim. You also have, it's the northern part of the city, so you have easy access to Modin. Modin is about 20-25 minutes away. There's also bus and train access to Tel Aviv. So basically, you have a lot of opportunities in every direction. A lot of people, if people who are able to continue working from home, from their job, let's say in the States, for example, I have my own advertising consulting business, and I have a home office. Before that, I was working in Tel Aviv a few days a week. Was not an issue taking a bus. And I've also worked, before I moved to remote, but I've also worked locally in Yerushalayim and Talpiot and other areas. So it's pretty convenient in that sense, and basically in every direction, I'd say. Ramot is also very close, literally down the road, about a 3 to 4 minute drive from Har Chotzbim, which is a very large high-tech park in Yerushalayim. And there are a lot of startups there. Intel, Teva, also large companies have large offices there as well. I'm trying to think if I missed anything else. There are plans to connect there currently is actually a fast train to Tel Aviv, and there are also plans eventually to connect remote, I think, via light rail to the fast train. So that's also something to keep in mind for the future.
They are also building a north bus terminal that's supposed to be intercity as well, that will serve, I guess, a different part of Israel, perhaps going to Tel Aviv Modi'in. That's in the process of being constructed right now in Ramot, just literally steps from where we are right now.
Right. Do we have any other questions about schools? Did we cover the hospitals?
I have a question, Kim.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Can you just introduce yourself and just tell people who you are?
Yes, I'm Rachel, and I'm from San Diego, California. And we were very interested in Ramot Bet from the beginning. So the question I have is, what is a shul like, that main Anglo shul, like on a Shabbat? And I'm wondering, since there's so many opportunities with school, I was just wondering, if there's other kids the same age as my daughter let's just say they don't go to the same school. Are there more kids in the area if they're going to different schools, and what the shul is like for the families? What the experience is like? Because I heard this one main Anglo shul, right?
Yeah, there are a few. I think, there's more than one. Actually, Alana Cowland, who's on the line, is a Rebbitzin in one of the shuls. Or she and her husband run a minyan, but it's a Shabbos. It's almost all English speakers, mostly. And there's also another shul you might be thinking about, which is called Mitzpeh Ramot, which was around for a long time, and you have different generations at that shul as well. Also a lot of English speakers. The rabbi, for example, he'll give our Torah in Hebrew and maybe in English as well. He's bilingual. I think he's Israeli, but spent some years in the States. But yes, there are a lot of 5-year-old children in the community, lots of young families moving in with young children. And as a matter of fact, there's a push to create more programming for the youth, so that kids who go to different schools will still have their neighborhood friends. And it's very much like that in Ramot, because kids will go to different schools. during the week on Shabbos, they'll get together at shul and they have different programs after shul, like Kiddush. I believe the minyan that Ilana's husband runs, they have a Kiddush every week. We're talking about before Corona, of course. When it's, Purim time, there are Megillah readings at different places. Simchas Torah, people will go from one shul to the next, and there are definitely a lot of programming for the children, more and more youth programming that's taking place in all the shuls that the Anglos go to.
What Kupat Chulim do you have there?
We have all 4 of them.
Which ones?
Pick whichever. All 4. Khalit, Mu'chedet, Maccabi, and what am I
Maybe
missing?
we should mention. Do you want to mention that there is a little clinic for people with children, but also I know other people have gone not just for children, but there is a remote medical clinic that's very close by, and they have a lot of very good doctors. And often people will, if they have to quickly see pediatrician or dermatologist, or ophthalmologist, they have doctors that come to this remote medical clinic. And of course, you can go to any place, certainly in Jerusalem and even outside of Jerusalem, but it's convenient to have the remote medical clinic. You can look them up online and see what they have to offer. And they have a lab as well, so if people need blood work, it's very convenient to go there.
Also, can we?
They don't handle all the kapot though. The clinic.
Okay. What do they? I know they take Mu'chedet.
Mu'chedet and Maccabi mostly.
Maccabi.
And the laboratory now only takes Mu'chedet, does not take Maccabi anymore.
Oh.
But the mall has everything, which is 2 minutes away by
Right.
car.
In terms of alternative medicine, a more natural approach, are people there like that, or are they more standard practice? In other words, do they have stores selling like organic and is there homeopathy, things like that, or is everybody sort of just drugs and surgeries and sort of just like standard medical practice?
I don't know about medical practice, but they do have stores selling natural foods and stuff like that in the mall.
Okay.
I have a question about the schools.
Okay.
So I was wondering, what's the school culture like? Because the other week when we joined like a Zoom, just as an example, a mom was saying how a part of the culture was the kids were yelling at the teachers were yelling at the students, and that was just a natural, normal thing there. I'm just wondering what the culture is like. I know there's a lot of different schools in Jerusalem, but is there is it depending on the school what the culture is like, or what is it from your perspective?
Right. Well, there actually, for New Olim, it's good to go to there are workshops available just about this very topic for moms to get used to the school system, because there are differences culturally and in Israel in general, but you really see it often in the school system. And as Ilana mentioned, Jerusalem the schools have everything. So you have Israeli, many Sabra children mostly, and the teachers and the administration will be Israeli mostly. But for a parent that, and sometimes the Anglo parents tend to have a little subgroup, and they'll often have a WhatsApp group for themselves just so they can help one another understand what's happening, and sometimes help one another with the cultural differences. I don't know about yelling exactly. I mean, the schools do a very good job in Israel. The academic standard is quite high. I would say that's been our experience. I worked in a school system in America, and I compared the books of my daughters, and math is quite superior in Israel, and it is as compared to the United States. The level is a lot higher. But you do have to get used to certain cultural differences, and what I recommend for New Olim is to have a support system of other moms who can help explain what something means. If someone says no, it doesn't really mean no. It means you have to try harder, or other things like that. You just have to learn as you go along.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just add something to what Sarah's saying? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's certainly true that whenever you make, move from one country to the next, there's a huge amount of acclimatization culturally. that has to happen. And as somebody said to me when we made Aliyah, like, don't forget, you guys are the immigrants, let your kids, like, you know, assimilate. And that was very good advice. But in terms of the schools, one of the amazing advantages, of course, is that, you know, wherever you live right now, if you want to send to a Jewish school, there are really only as many Jewish schools as there are Jews in your community. But in Israel, you know, pretty much like there's like a huge amount of kids your children's age, and there are as many schools. So the options are enormous. In fact, when I was sending one of my kids to high school, we were so overwhelmed with the choices that I actually employed someone who, as a full-time job, you know, will sit down and ask you for what you want from a school, and for a fee, you know, will bring you the schools that match your profile. And there were schools I had never heard of because we needed something very specialized for this particular child. You know, it's a Jewish country, so if you have a nuanced need, there is a very much bigger likelihood then that one of the schools, you know, somewhere in the town will be able to meet your need, than if, you know, if you're stuck in your little provincial town, out of town place where there's 3 Jewish schools, and if your kid doesn't gel, then, you know, nothing much you can do if you want to keep them in the Jewish system. So whilst there is a huge shift for us as we, you know, figure our way out in a new culture, we also have our choices increase, which is an advantage, really.
Great. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and thank you so much. I appreciate all the thoughtful answers.
I want to just cross over, if it's okay. I want to introduce somebody who I partner with, who has an amazing organization, Olim Advisors. Rafi, are you on the call?
I am. Hi, everyone. Kim, thanks so much for inviting me to join the Zoom call. Let me give you just a quick introduction about my organization and what we do, and why Kim had asked me to join. So I made Aliyah about 5 years ago with my family from New Jersey. And I actually grew up in Israel as a kid, and so this was really coming back home. And what I realized is that making Aliyah is difficult, and it was difficult for us, even though I speak Hebrew fluently and I have the Israeli mindset and chutzpah and everything that goes along with it. But we realized that there's so many challenges, and so I sat down with my sister, who lives here in Israel as well, and we said, let's do something about it. Let's come up with an organization that can help people go through all these tough decisions and make these decisions that you're talking about. And so we met with Nefesh B'Nefesh, and we asked them what they thought, and they thought it was a great idea because, as many of you know, they focus on the bureaucracy and getting you here. But then there's 101 things that you have to deal with before and after you make Aliyah. And so what we do is that we start helping people from really the beginning of the process. A lot of people, such as yourselves, don't know where you want to live, or you're not sure where you want to live. So we'll help you narrow it down. It might be Ramot Bet, it might be Yerushalayim, it might be Nahariya. You know, there's so many different wonderful choices. So we can help you and guide you based on your needs. And then once we do that, we then will help you find a home and work with people such as Kim to help you find a home, to help you find schools. And so there's a lot of the work that we can do for you, in essence, on the ground before you get here. And then once you arrive in Israel, that's when we really roll up our sleeves and start helping you practically. So for example, there's some things that you have to do within the first week or so. You have to go to the bank to open up your bank account. You have to go to Misad HaKlita, Misad HaPnim. There's a lot of bureaucracy that you need to take care of pretty shortly after you get to Israel. And so we've done that many times. We have great connections in all the different government agencies. And so we really turn a very overwhelming process into experience that really isn't as bad. And then it's just the ongoing support, as somebody mentioned, I think it was Ilana, when your kid's enrolled in school, they might not get the support that they deserve, and you might not know to ask for the support. And so because we've done this, we can work with you and we can advocate for you and your kids and make sure that they're getting the right support in school. And then as questions come up on a daily basis, it could be, how do I register for, how do I find the ENT? How do I sign up for a new doctor? How do I get braces, and so on and so forth. And we really hold your hand as you go through the process. So typically, clients will sign up with us 6 months to a year before they make Aliyah. So we spend a ton of time with them going through the process. And then our service typically lasts for 6 months to a year after you make Aliyah. And from our point of view, it's just such a inspiring experience as we help people make Aliyah. I feel like I'm making Aliyah every time somebody makes Aliyah, and it's just it's a wonderful process to be involved in, and we're happy to help. And so if you have any general questions about communities, about schools, about banks and jobs and things like that, just feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my contact information here in chat, and we can talk to you and really help you navigate through this process. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be consuming. It doesn't have to be, that expensive if you have a right plan. And that's really what we try to do.
Thank you so much, Rafi.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate it. Are there more questions? Can somebody tell us a little bit about the community center, the Matnas? Anybody want to share? There's a swimming pool?
I'm happy to say, yeah, there's a really nice swimming pool that's open every day, and they have mixed hours, men's hours, women's hours. It's a very nice indoor pool. There's a lot of hugim, a lot of like after school programs for kids. My son plays basketball there. My other boys play soccer through the, it's like a JCC type of thing. You know, there's a big gym. They have activities almost every day. So for kids, it's wonderful. And also for adults too.
Yeah, the Matnas actually has a representative whose job is to address the needs of the Anglo-Olim, and she's working very hard to try to incorporate more activities with New Olim and people who speak English, and translate the different advertisements into English and run programming in English. She's working with people in the community to try to develop that further as the community, as the English-speaking community grows and develops.
Great. Somebody asked on the, and maybe David or Patrick or anybody from Ramot, they're asking about the different Ramots. So there was a reason I chose Ramot Bet in particular, is because it is the most Anglo out of all the Ramots. But maybe Patrick or David, you just want to explain to people about the different areas.
Okay, sure. So I'd say overall, Ramot Bet is probably the most diverse. Like Kim said, the largest English-speaking community is in Ramot Bet. I think parts of Ramot Gimel, which border on Ramot Bet, are also diverse, and you have some English speakers living there as well. And what's interesting is you have a lot of kind of, I'd say, rules and also exceptions to the rules. So you have like a lot of different kinds of flavors, like within even that even in that, you know. Sorry, can someone just mute, because it's very hard to.
I don't know if it is. I think. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks. So I was just saying that within the, let's say in Ramot Gimel, which is near Ramot Bet, it tends to be overall like a more black hat sort of community, but there are certain areas that are not, and there's certain areas that are more like Dati Leumi. And for example, there's a shul called B'nai Arama, which is like, like a more like Dati Leumi shul, and there are even some Anglos who go there, and there's some Anglos who are more yeshivish or modern yeshivish or whatever you want to call it. So you have that as well. That's kind of Bet and Gimel. I'd say the other parts of Ramot, which are basically Aleph and Daled, which are kind of on the other side of the main road, Goldemir, that kind of cuts through Ramot. So when you're coming up to Ramot, on your right is Aleph and Daled, and on your left is Bet and Gimel. So Aleph and Daled are pretty much almost all Haredi these days. They're actually, it's interesting because there are community centers there as well. So there are also some different schools there. So for example, the Noam schools in Aleph. So it's just a 5-minute drive. So even though it's kind of a different community in terms of, and there aren't so many Anglos in those areas typically. There are a few, but not so many. But at least the Anglo community in Ramot Bet, I think, is very familiar with certain pockets in those areas. So for example, today I myself went to there's a small health food store in Ramot Daled. It's just a 5-minute drive. It's very convenient, and some of my kids go to the Noam schools, which are in remote Aleph, which is also just a few minutes away. And there are also various Kupat Cholim, medical centers also throughout, as well as pharmacies. So it's interesting because it's a pretty spread out area, but it still has a very suburban feel, and you get a lot of services. So it's almost like a town within a city. A friend of mine sometimes calls the whole area of Ramot as like a suburb in a city. So it's yeah. If anyone else, Patrick, if you want to add to that, or anyone else, feel free.
Well, we live in Ramot Bet, but we live close to the Bnei Akiva that somebody mentioned. So it's actually on the border of Gimel. And we like that because there are families moving into Gimel too, Anglo families that are moving into Gimel. And some of them participate they come to the shuls in Ramot Bet. So there's a little bit of an overlap, and sometimes it's hard in terms of real estate to find what someone may be looking for in Ramot Bet. So just to open up the fact that people are going to Gimel and finding houses, and there's maybe some more houses available now in Gimel, and it's really not that far, and it's almost kind of an extension now in terms of the community of Ramot Bet.
I have a question about that, actually. So what's the walking distance like if you live in Gimel to Ramot Bet? And secondly, what's the difference in the feel of the neighborhood?
Okay,
like,
well,
for example, does it look, how does, in terms of looks and in terms of how old the place is, in terms of the families, whatever differences there are?
in terms of distance, Bet and Gimel, they border one another. So literally, you could be in Gimel in a 5-minute walk from Bet. But again, that's if you're near the border area. Having said that, they're building a new park right on the border of Bet and Gimel. Right now, they're building a new park to replace the bus parking lot there. And the mall, which is a big, nice mall, they just expanded it about a year ago. The mall is on the border of Bet and Gimel also. I think in terms of housing options, it seems as if what Bet has in addition to Gimel is there are also some areas which have either single-family homes or two-family homes. That's mainly just in Bet. Gimel, though, they have the attached homes. They have apartments, and there's a variety of housing options also in Gimel. I'd say on the whole, I think it's a little more Haredi, although other people might be able to speak to that a little better than I can.
But there's a bit of a mix now. People are moving in. English speakers are moving in to
I
Gimel.
see someone's asking about the like housing prices in Gimel versus Bet. The prices are, I think, overall a little bit lower in Gimel. I think Bet is a little more in demand. But yeah.
For an older person who walks with a cane, what is the terrain like? Is it very hilly?
Yes, that's
Yes.
actually, when you were talking about distances, one of the things that you do have to take into consideration is that Ramot does mean heights, and we are built on a hill or hills. So when you are walking, you are typically walking either uphill or downhill. It's rare for you to be walking in a straight line without having to take into consideration, changes in altitude. So if you are walking, it does keep you younger, providing your knees and hips are okay.
Okay.
Hi, this is Leon Manicherry
Hi, Leon.
from New York. Question for, I guess, all, and this might be a sensitive question. Seeing that how close Ramot is to the Green Line, as far as the Arab community, any issues or any concerns? I mean, we're from New York, so the closest we come to Arabs are, the Arabs that live in Brooklyn, and semi-peaceful. But for the ones that actually moved recently, anything to be concerned about? I mean, I understand it's Israel and Arabs do live there, but to move to a new country and to live amongst Arabs might be a complete culture shock for some of us, at least.
I'll speak to that a little bit. I was a bit shocked when we moved here, and after we already moved here, I started hearing during the night. I woke up in the middle of the night because I started hearing the call to prayer. So we do, in some neighborhoods, you will actually hear the call to prayer from a nearby village, a nearby Arab village. However, in Ramot, you generally do not see Arabs in Ramot itself. Maybe in the mall once in a while, but it's less than you will interact with in other parts of Jerusalem, like certainly like in, you know, the center, town center. There are many more there. You know, maybe again, like I said, in the mall perhaps, but overall you do not see, unless they're workers that come in and come out. So we don't, I'm also from Brooklyn, by the way. So I think it's more frightening in Brooklyn, especially Foster Avenue with the big mosques. But, you know, you do hear, and we do share the Jerusalem forest that somebody spoke about, which is very beautiful. And during Corona, we've been able to take walks and see wildlife. You can see deer, and you can see tortoises, and all kinds of, you know, beautiful greenery. There is, as I mentioned, there is an Arab village, but it's a peaceful village, and there any negative interactions, except perhaps burglaries that may or may not come from Israelis or perhaps Arabs and bordering areas. But in Jerusalem, in general, anywhere in Jerusalem, you will be near some Arab communities. It hasn't, in our experience, and I'm not a long-term Ramot resident at all, but we, in the 2 years we've been here, we have not had any negative interactions.
We live on Derech HaChorish, which borders on the forest, and there is a very prominent police presence. It is not uncommon to see a police car, patrolling the neighborhood. So we feel really very, very safe in this neighborhood. Certainly as safe as we just came back from New York the beginning of March, and to be honest, I really do feel safer here. And that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah, I from where I live, I don't hear any call to prayer, and it's funny because I don't live that far from the levees, from Sarah and her husband, but I guess it depends where you are. From where down the road where we are, we don't hear it at all.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean that you can't go from Jerusalem, from the city center or whatever it is, straight into Ramot base? You have to go out?
No. Someone was asking about the location of the Green Line, and I was just saying that you do pass through, like, outside and then inside to parts of Ramot Bet. But we're on the Jerusalem bus line. You cannot tell that you're leaving what was pre-67 Jerusalem to post-67 Jerusalem, because the city was annexed many years ago, or sovereignty, I prefer that word. You really cannot tell the difference. You're on the bus, and you have a bus stop here and a bus stop there, and you're not even aware of where the Green Line is, to be very honest.
But you do have to go out of the Green Line unless when you're going on the bus, or
it's sort of, but it's really a technicality. It's not like, just as a comparison, like if you go, I don't know if anyone's familiar with, like, if you go south, you know, of Jerusalem towards Gush Etzion, like, you leave the city of Jerusalem and then you're in, you know, you're over the Green Line. Like, if you go towards Efrat or Neve Daniel or those communities, like, it's a different feel, as opposed to when you're going to Ramot, let's say from the Shuk or Kira Moshe or Nachlot or any of these places. It's just the same road just keeps going. It's not, there's no border, there's no, like, you have now
no
left,
checkpoints.
You know, it's the same thing. It's just, everything looks the same signs, the same, you know, the same buses. It's just the technicality, really. Like, you wouldn't, if someone didn't tell you that there was a Green Line, you would really never even know about it.
If Larry hadn't mentioned it, you wouldn't know.
Exactly. The checkpoint, there's no checkpoint between us and Yerushalayim. The closest checkpoint to where we are is, you know, several kilometers north of where we are. So it's like, you're not even aware of the fact that there was a green line 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years ago.
I have
Someone
a
just,
quick question.
someone just mentioned Kiryat Moshe. Is the neighborhood very different than Kiryat Moshe?
Yes. Much
Kiryat
greener.
Yeah, Kiryat Moshe has more of a city feeling to it, unless
Mostly apartments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it has any houses, does it?
No,
I don't think so.
no houses. It's an older neighborhood. It's a very Israeli neighborhood. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's what it is. It's more Israeli. There are some young Anglo couples that are living there because it's close to the train. But in general, it's definitely more Israeli and no houses, all apartment buildings. There is some new construction going up, but in general, it's older. And just to clarify, Ramot Bet is Jerusalem. Okay,
Right.
it is Jerusalem. You can get on a bus. I have many friends that I live in the old city, so I don't have a car because I can't deal with the stress of having to find parking in the old city. And it takes 20 minutes, 25 minutes from a bus stop just outside the old city to get to Ramot Bet. It's very, very easy. You don't feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. Ramot Bet is Yerushalayim. It's a beautiful green space.
But what we walked to the old city.
Yeah,
Right.
Ilana's walked. How long did it take you, Ilana?
An hour and a half.
2 hours.
An hour and a quarter. I'm very proud to say. Thank you very much. An hour and a quarter. It was a lot of fun with the rest, like with the huge delegation. It's the most amazing thing in the world. Fantastic.
Okay, so
Not so much on the walk back,
Question,
but
Kim?
who had another question?
Rachel, I have a quick question.
Do you need to have a car if you live in Ramot Bet?
Do you need to have a car?
No.
That's
I
a
don't think
very
so.
good question. We lived here for a year before we got a car. And the main reason we have a car is because our son lives in Lod and it's easier to get out of the city with a car than it is without a car. If you're just going into town, it's easier to go with a bus because the parking is a nightmare in downtown Yerushalayim.
Right.
So you can manage quite well. In fact, incidentally, our car just broke down and I've been having this discussion with my wife as to whether we should or shouldn't replace the car because you can manage quite well without a car if you're staying in the city. And that's going into town, going into the central center of the city.
And if you wanted to go to Lode or if you wanted to go to the beach in Netanya or something, you could always just rent something or take a cab, I guess.
That's in fact what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks is renting on those days that we need it when we want to go to Lod and visit our kids. Apart from that, it's, you can manage well without.
A lot of people are asking about real estate. Okay, as I mentioned, I am a real estate broker. What I do is I partner with different real estate agents within the community. So I will investigate opportunities for you. So if anybody is interested in Ramot as a possibility for them to live or rent, please reach out to me and I will hook you up with the necessary agents. I can tell you from experience, when you go onto all these websites, there's a lot of agents, there's a lot of real estate a lot of real estate companies. Not all the listings are relevant, unfortunately. So what you need to do is you really need to just give me your details and I will give them over to the people that I work with, that I trust, that will be able to provide you with the necessary information. Now, there is a shortage of rentals in Ramot. There is not a lot of rental opportunities from my understanding of houses. They are anything from between 7,000 shekels a month to 10,000 shekels a month. So that relates to between, I would say, my math is not $2,000 to $2,500 a month, $1,800 a month. Pricing of houses, it depends on what you want. You can get apartments, you can get cottages, you can get villas, and that ranges in price. And as I think Sarah or Ilana mentioned, a lot of these places are older that do require a full renovation. Okay, so you need to be, that's That's part of it. There are definitely amazing opportunities. And please reach out. I'm happy to help anybody on the real estate side, and also give you, to local agents who work in the community.
Can I also add something about the real estate, which is really actually very nice? Two nice things to bear in mind. First of all, what Kim was saying about the different types of houses, what it really adds, and I think it's a quality of Ramot, is that, it's not one of those places where, the friendships were limited to a particular income bracket. You've got people living in tiny apartments, people living in little houses, people living in big mansions, and there is no financial divide in the community, really. If you're friends, you're friends. You have some, wealthier friends and some friends who are struggling, and it really makes no difference, which is also a very unusual part of the Ramot community feel, and very special. And I would also add that whilst it doesn't sound like a fabulous thing that there aren't rentals, in Yerushalayim, there are certain places where people go to rent, and they become like marketplaces. People go for a year and they leave, and they go for a year and they leave, and you never really know, whether your friends are staying. So it's very difficult to invest in relationships. Ramot is one of those neighborhoods, and this is probably why the rentals are harder to find, where people come often because they've decided that they're settling. So whilst it's annoying when you're trying to find a rental, what it means is if you make a commitment to staying, the people around you will be your neighbors, more likely than not for life. And that's very, very settling for your children. They're not just, there's not a huge turnover of people coming and going. People who come settle, and that's why it's more of a buying mentality over here, which is a good thing in the end.
And there are some great opportunities now. I mean, it's still an expensive neighborhood, but for those looking for a house or bigger property, Ramot definitely has those, available options for people. And I'm just giving an example just to give people an understanding. You cannot, and I say this in all my calls, that you cannot copy paste your life from America, England, South Africa, Australia to Israel. It's a reframe. You're coming into a completely different culture. However, I also think it's important to be in an area. Some people, I had a call today, I'm doing Aliyah calls all the time, about people who feel it's very necessary to integrate. The husband really wants to be integrated into the Israeli world. And I'm saying I think it's a little bit too much in the beginning. So I think it's important to align yourself in the beginning to be with people who you are familiar with, speak the same language. It's challenging enough when you make Aliyah. So I think that Ramot Bet offers a lot of, it's a soft landing for many people because there's already an established community of people in the neighborhood that can take care of you. David is the Nefesh B'Nefesh representative. Where's David? Right? He's there. Hi, David. Okay, there you are. And he is, part of the welcoming committee. So you will not be alone. If you decide that Ramot Bet is the community for you, they're going to take care of you. Okay, so feel free to reach out to me. We're going on over an hour for the call. Not that I'm hanging up on anybody. And I'd like to end off. Larry, you want to say a few words?
I just wanted to mention, I know there are a lot of questions around schooling, and there's a lot of younger people. If any of you are of the more senior age and have more questions or issues around retirement in Israel, please feel free to get my name, my email address, from Kim, and I'd be more than willing to talk to you, call you, speak to you about what it's like to retire in this community.
Great. And I just want to add that every week, 9 p.m. Israel time, that's 2 p.m. New York, LA time, 11. South Africa is, I think, 1 hour behind, England 2 hours behind. We are going to look into more communities. Next week, we're doing Kiryat HaSharon, which is towards Netanya. And if you have a particular neighborhood that you would like me to look into for you, please private message me. We're going to be doing it for as long as we find everybody a community that they feel, that that's where they want to go. And please feel free to reach out to me if you want a one-on-one session as well. Rafi, did you put your number on the call? On the chat?
I did, and I'll do it again. And I really encourage anyone to reach out to me as well.
Okay, we're here as a support system for everybody. So please take advantage of us. We're here to help you. And again, my number is on the WhatsApp chat. You can see it, on the WhatsApp, on the Zoom chat. And you can find me on Facebook, Kim Bash.
Thank you.
And also anybody else, I just want to say thank you so much to David. A real pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Larry. Thank you to the Levies. Thank you to Patrick. Ilana, thank you so much. I hope I haven't left anybody out. There was Nikas, thank you again. Margie, thank you very much. And again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to provide information of anybody on the call. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Any last questions before we sign off?
Yes, I have a question. For the ones with families that moved, I understand that they say, you know, in the beginning, you rent first and you get a feel of the community, and then probably, you know, you personally or people that you know have moved to different communities or different cities. What's it like with kids to move to one city when they start school and then having to pack up and move to another city? I mean, it's already a culture shock to move to a new country, and how does it work with moving to a new city?
Great
Depends on the
question.
kids.
Great question. It's not that easy. We did it. We lived for 3 years or 4 years in one community, and then we moved to Ramot Bet, and it was difficult for our children to acclimate again because, you know, first they acclimate to Israel, and when you come to another community, we moved from a yishuv, which is a smaller, not quite a city, to Ramot, which is more of a city life, although it's still, you know, quite suburban as well. So it's not easy, but, you know, kids are resilient and you do your best. But perhaps if you see a community that looks like a good potential, the idea is that, you know, if you rent, you get a better feel for the details of the community before investing and buying and making it a little more permanent. So I think, you know, there is that kind of balance. You only really get to know a community once you actually live there, but you do the best you can from what you can find out now. And I guess thanks again to Kim for doing this, because we didn't have something like this when we were looking at communities, and, you know, I imagine you'll be exposed to other communities. So before you make your choice, you do the best you can, and you know, you gain from whatever community you live in, even if it doesn't end up being the one that you're going to, you know, end up in longer term. So many people do move, make a few moves before they find that place that they, you know, buy a house in, or that they live it a bit longer.
Yeah, I really second, although I'm a big believer in buying, because I think when you rent, you're paying somebody else's mortgage. But when you're making Aliyah and you're not sure where you're going to go, you know, it's important to figure that out beforehand. And I wouldn't necessarily buy unless you knew that you had friends in a particular neighborhood or you had family. What's going on right now is a bit of a frenzy. There's like people that are contacting me. People are buying real estate with me without seeing it. They are sending their cousins, uncles, brothers, sisters, friends to look at real estate because they're so worried that they're going to lose out on opportunities. Now it is a buyer's market right now. There is a lot of opportunity right now. And for those who do know a particular neighborhood and they feel confident and they have the means to do so, then that's great. But not everybody's in the position to do so. A lot of people also ask me for mortgage brokers. I'm happy to give you. I have one person that I trust, that I use, lawyers, etc. I can help you with all of that. But I think it's important to find where you feel that you would fit in. And again, nothing is set in stone. And I think that just making the decision to come is amazing. But we just want to help you try and make that landing a little bit easier. So that's why I'm doing these calls, and hopefully it will be beneficial to some of you. Thank you all for joining us, and God willing, we'll see you all maybe next week, and don't hesitate to reach out. Again, thank you to Ramot Bet people, and appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm staying on the line for a little bit if anybody wants to chat
Thank
more.
you very much.
And there will be a recording of this, okay? This is being recorded, if I get it right. If anybody wants to record it. Yes, who's that?
I have a quick question that people who listen to the recording will not have access to because it's in the chat. Lara Krinsky had suggested that communities to consider are Netanya, Zichron Yaakov, and Tel Mond. And I just wanted to ask if Lara's still here, why she would recommend those 4 communities. Is it because they're soft landings?
Can I just say one thing? I forgot to say thank you to Ilana Cal, and then she disappeared off the call. Okay, so thank you, Ilana. I'm sorry. Answer that question. Sorry, Laura.
You did thank her. You're okay.
Oh, did I thank her? Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say, Kim had mentioned like if there's communities that you're interested in to list them. So those are ones that that are also interesting to me because I like from what I've heard about them. They're close to the ocean. They seem like they have a lot of diversity. There's lots of unique communities there. And so I was just putting it out there.
Oh, you don't live in Israel. You're someone like me who's looking to move to Israel.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, because I know that that's what we're interested in, something near the Mediterranean with a big Anglo population. And I knew about Netanya and maybe Hadera, but I wasn't aware of Zichron Yaakov and Tel Mond. I didn't know that those two were on the Mediterranean as well. And I would be interested in learning more about those in terms of the Anglo population and hashkafically as well.
Right.
So I did, there is a recording on Tel Mond. Okay, I did one, sorry. I did a, can you hear me? My internet's going a little bit funny here. I did do a recording. We had a session on Tel Mond. It's one of my favorite communities as well. Pardes Chana is fabulous. There's a lot of amazing places to go. So next week, we're going to start going up to Netanya side. We're doing Kiryat HaSharon, then we're going to do Ir Yamim. Then I'm going to go to Renana because a lot of people ask me about Renana because that's very Anglo, but it's very expensive. And we're going to see. Nahariya is it's a lot Israeli and very far up, but there is a small percentage of Anglos there as well. And also another thing I'm trying to do is I'm going to be looking into, it's not for everybody, but I'm going to be looking into kibbutzim and what's available. There's a lot of land to buy. So some people want to come in with groups of like families and build themselves. There's places in the Galil. So I think there's something for everybody. It just depends on what you want to do. I had a call, I don't know if you want some of you on last week, but I've got a community that's coming that wants to come together. There's 24 families that are coming, making Aliyah together, and they all want me to they want to find a place to live. So we're researching all different opportunities for them. Obviously Jerusalem is expensive, Tel Aviv is expensive. Any of the major cities are going to be expensive. So, but private message me. Laura, you sent me a message now, right? I think you just messaged me. Somebody just messaged me. Okay. And
I just want to add something about Ramot. I think just like a little personal anecdote. So our family was living in Katamon, if anyone's familiar, which is another side of town in Yerushalayim, before we moved to Ramot. And we were looking for a place. We wanted to stay in Yerushalayim or the general area. And we looked in basically all over in Ma'ale Adumim and Gush Etzion and Givat Zev and all sorts of places. And then we said, well, maybe we could just stay in Yerushalayim because, if you want to be in Yerushalayim, I think Ramot Bet is a really, really good option, especially if you're a family or you're looking for a more suburban area as well, even if you're like a retired, demographic. And so we chose Ramot Bet because, well, first of all, we didn't even know at the time about it. It was kind of a hidden gem. I think maybe to some extent it still is. I think it's very unique in the sense that if you want to be in Yerushalayim, I know, like you mentioned, a lot of communities, and those are all great communities. I think if you want to be in the Yerushalayim area, Ramot Bet is a very unique option. So that's just something that I think is not obvious, and I think it's worth mentioning again. Because we looked, and there are a lot of neighborhoods in the city, and I think Ramot Bet is one of the only places that has, in terms of housing options, in terms of green space, in terms of just having so many services so close by, that we weren't really able to find something similar in the greater area. Of course, if you want to be in a different place, like if you want to be more in the Merkaz, if you're going to be working in Tel Aviv, if you want to, if you're working in finance or things and you want to be closer, then that's, you know, that makes sense, and that's totally logical. But I think in the Yerushalayim area, Ramot has a lot going for it, which, like, I've lived in a few other neighborhoods in the city, and it's definitely unique in that sense. So,
Any other questions? I think, David, one of the things that people are expressing to me is that the
question.
community is a little bit more expensive. So it has, you know, it's hard to find the rental option.
oh, so that, right. So I wanted to mention that point also. So it is expensive if you're comparing to, let's say, Yishuv, like that's outside the city, or maybe places. I don't know the real estate prices in Rehovot or other places. It could be those places which are maybe cheaper. But if you want to be in Yerushalayim, then the remote prices are actually much more reasonable in that sense. I wouldn't say it's cheap, but much more reasonable when you compare them to other places in Yerushalayim. So
yes.
So like, for example, when we were living in Katamon, a 4 or 5 bedroom like townhouse, or what we call a cottage, was around 6 to 7 million shekels, just like basically $2 million. And our house that we bought in Ramot is half of that. So that's pretty significant.
Absolutely.
And we're still in Yerushalayim, and we still have, you know, children in schools in Yerushalayim, and youth groups, and shopping, and access to restaurants, and everything. So for that perspective, it's actually much more reasonable. So if you want to stay in Yerushalayim, and it's so much closer. So, and I have a good friend, by the way, who lives in Ramot Bet, and obviously there are a lot of good things about Ramot Bet, and I'm not trying to, you know, say anything about that in any way, but it was just interesting that he told me that the prices there for a cottage are actually almost the same as Ramot Bet, which to me was very shocking, because it's 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
So, and there are a lot of great things about that community, but it's just interesting that, you know, we're not 45 minutes away. We are here in Yerushalayim. So it's actually, if that's what you're looking for, then I think it's, yeah.
Also, compared to places like Rehavia, you can get a 2-bedroom apartment there for what you can get a 5-bedroom house here.
Correct.
Also true, yeah.
I mean, the real estate prices I mostly work a lot of luxury in Jerusalem, and the prices are insane. And people will buy properties that are much more expensive than their homes in America. And again, I think Ramot is it's a suburb. It really it's green. There's nothing like it in Jerusalem itself, in downtown Jerusalem. So for people,
the other thing is, it's really a community.
Yeah.
If you buy something in Rehavia, nobody lives there. They come 2 weeks, and 2 weeks, and that's it.
Yes, somebody asked also about the shopping, and I just want to tell you that it's very easy. I mean, I'm even me living in the old city, but there's a Rami Levi. Am I correct, David? Is there a Rami Levi?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
there's a small Rami Levi local. Yeah.
There's cafes. There's a supermarket. There's so much online shopping. It's very easy to shop around and get what you need. You don't necessarily need a car, because people can, you know, get deliveries as well. So it's very, very easy. Very easy living.
Actually, conversation. But Larry, you said something a little bit ago about homogeneity and heterogeneity with regards to Mishkafa and politics.
I think
my computer sort of buzzed out. So what were you saying about politics?
What I was saying is, and it may be disputed, because yes, Ramot is very diverse insofar as we have Sephardim, we have Ashkenazim, we have people in Ramot who are Dati Lumi, we have people who are, and I don't like to use the word Chiloni, but unfortunately that is the term, we have people who are Haredi, Chardal. In that sense, we are very diverse. However, what I have found in our neighborhood in Ramot Bet is that in spite of the age difference between people, politically, we are all very, very similar in terms of being Dati Lumi, in terms of being, well, obviously pro-Zionist, if you're considering Aliyah. I mean, we're all very homogeneous in that regard.
Oh, so like you support like Likud, for example, or Netanyahu, or?
I would maybe even little further to the right of him, but yeah, Yeah,
Like you don't want to give the country away.
I would say that in our neighborhood, every time there's an election, we run into friends on our way to and from the polls, and we're all scratching our head wondering, what are we supposed to do? But that's no different than any other Israeli in this country. That's why we had, 3 elections to figure out who the government was going to be. It's, there's such subtle differences between the parties, and it's like everyone has a different opinion and starts its own political party in this country. So it's really kind of hard to really navigate your way through, who am I supporting today as opposed to yesterday, and never mind what's going to happen tomorrow.
So you're from America, so is it safe to say that generally what you're saying is sort of that people are more politically conservative, like more Republican, to put it in American?
Yes, I'll put it this way. I would, if we were doing a survey of Israelis and asking them their opinion of President Trump, unlike the United States, I would predict that a large majority of Israelis would say they support Trump. That's just my sense.
Well, that's very important information for us because we, unfortunately, for what it is, such as it is, live in New Jersey, and it's extremely liberal state, and we just have these fascist laws every 14 days. It's insane. So it's good to know that take on it. I'm glad I clarified.
You know what? I unfortunately, I really don't want to get into the whole politics because it's like you can't get out of it, but I would say I feel a lot more comfortable here. I also feel comfortable in that I can express my political opinion without worrying that I'm going to be shamed or people are going to attack me because I'm not left of center.
Larry, thank you for sharing.
Pardon me?
I just said thank you for sharing. That's important to hear and know.
No, it's
very helpful.
Especially now, and
I think it's not just about Ramot. It's an Israeli cultural thing. People are much more open. There's a lot more kind of, you talk to your taxi driver about your whatever you want. Like things are just much more fluid and open in that sense. It's just like. Your kids are not gonna get made fun of in school because you put up a flag or you didn't put up a flag or you put up the wrong flag or I don't know what. So
yeah, you come to Israel around Yom Ha'atzmaut or between Pesach and Yom Ha'atzmaut, and you see a whole lot of flags, and nobody is ashamed to put the flag up, and no one feels that they're offending anyone.
I'm sorry, I'm also curious along those lines of medical choice. We've had serious issues in America with people having sort of like a religious belief in medicine, and there's been a lot of prejudice against people who choose for whatever reason not to give their children all of the vaccines all of the time in all of the orders that is recommended.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, in terms of tolerance with medical choice and medical freedom, is there peer pressure? Is it more live and let live over there in terms of that?
I don't know. We don't have young kids, so I really can't comment on that. I don't know what other people's experiences have been.
So, I mean, I can answer that. Some of the schools will not let you in if your kids are not vaccinated. Just telling, that's the way it is. You have to have.
Which school?
I mean, it depends. You got to find out because every school is different. It's like, it's a personal choice, I guess, and some people do different things, but a lot of depends. I can't remember, a few years ago, there was a case of polio or something going around, and I don't exactly remember the details, but everybody had to get a shot. Otherwise, you weren't allowed.
I think it was measles.
So they don't accept medical exemptions.
I can't
if
remember.
The doctor says this child can't be vaccinated. Do they accept medical exemptions there?
You know what? It's a very good question. It's very personal. I don't want to give you the wrong information. You'll have to investigate that on your own and figure it out. I'm not sure.
So it's basically depends on each school or on each community. It's not like a state.
It's one of these things I think people don't like to necessarily discuss. It gets, people get heated up about these things. So, and everybody's got an opinion about it. So you just make the best decision for your family, I guess. And you have to figure out with the schools. You know, I had a whole thing with sending kids back to school during Corona. I had a lot of my friends who refused to send their kids. And I have 4 very Israeli boys. And there was no chance they were staying home any longer. And so I sent them to school with their, with their masks, and the school's been very careful. But some people chose not to send. But that's their decision. I felt I made the best decision for my family, and I guess everybody, needs to do with vaccinations and things like that. You'd have to look into that. I can't answer that. That's fair. David, I don't know what it's like with your kids.
I don't know if this is relevant or not, but just in terms of the coronavirus, when things started opening up and people were going out, it seemed to me we were very, very conscious about wearing masks because of our age, and we feel that we're perhaps more vulnerable. And we've noticed that a lot of people don't wear masks. So I don't know if that has anything whatsoever to do with what you're saying about how open people are to a broad spectrum of acceptance of different kinds of views on healthcare and so forth. But Israelis, by and large, tend to be very laissez-faire when it comes to restrictions that are imposed on them. And that's probably why we're seeing an uptake in the numbers so significantly, because they tend to have a sort of a callous disregard for externally imposed rules. So they'll wear a mask, but it might be dangling around their neck rather than over their mouth and their nose.
Are you having more cases or are you having more deaths?
More cases.
More cases, not more, not really more deaths. More cases.
Okay, so that's what we're seeing. I mean, pretty much generally all over, because then you would expect that. And that's a fantastic thing. That means that young people are getting it, they're testing it, we're building herd immunity, and it's going to die out. That's what happens with virology. When the virus has to survive, it can't kill its host. So eventually, over time, slowly with the children who don't get affected, it spreads and finished. We're done.
Yeah, I mean, thank God, although the numbers have sort of been going up and there's almost a bimodal distribution of cases, you're right, it's not as severe, and certainly you're not seeing the level of mortality that we were seeing in the first time around, thank God.
And also, they're giving people fines now. If you leave your mask, you get a fine. Where I live in the old city, I live just wherever I walk every day to Mamilla, to town, there are policemen and they're giving out fines to people. So it's making more people, really take it seriously. You go on public transport, where I go, everybody's got masks on. So people are being very, very careful here. I want to end the call, not because I don't want to stay chatting, but I think that it's getting
a lot of fun, Kim. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And I look forward, again, please reach out to me. Again, I have time slots every night if anybody wants to PM me, and we can talk privately. So just reach out to me. Again, thank you, David. Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you, Margie. Thank you so much to everybody. And have a good evening. And PM me if you want the recording and any information about real estate. And that's about it.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
Good luck.
We look forward to seeing you here, either in remote or anywhere else in the country.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.